Hi, in this video we're going to find the greatest common factor, or GCF, and then factor this polynomial completely using the grouping method. To find the GCF, we want to find the greatest or largest factor which is common to all four terms. Since the first term starts with a negative, we need a negative as part of our GCF. We then notice that 2 is the largest number which goes evenly into 8, 12, 28, and 42. So -2 is part of your GCF. Now let's look at the variables. The most x's that all four terms have in common, C stands for common, is just x to the first. So we want to find the GCF of -2x. -2x is the largest factor which all four terms have in common. Now we want to factor this polynomial completely. To start, we're going to take this GCF we found and write it in front of a big parentheses. When we're factoring, we're essentially using the distributive property backwards. So we're going to ask ourselves, -2x times what equals this -8x to the fourth that we started with for our first term? Well, -2 times a positive 4 equals that -8 we started with. And x times x to the third equals x to the fourth that we started with in our first term. Another way of thinking about this is to take this first term, this -8x to the fourth, divided by your GCF, which equals the 4x to the third that you have as your first term inside the parentheses. Now we repeat the process for the other three terms. -2x times what equals positive 12x to the third? -2 times -6 equals positive 12, and we started with x to the third, or 3x's multiplied. 1x came out, so we're left with x to the second. For the third term inside our parentheses, got 28x to the third to start with. 28x squared. 28x squared divided by our GCF is equal to -14x. And I'm showing you two different ways here to get this stuff in the parentheses. It doesn't matter which way you do it as long as you get the same answer inside the parentheses. And for this last term, -2x times what equals -42x? -2 times a positive 21 equals your -42, and we started with 1x. 1x came out, so there's no x's left inside our parentheses. We are not finished. We factored out the GCF, but we can still factor the stuff that's in parentheses even more because we want to factor completely. So let me rewrite this to be a little bit neater. Now we want to factor this stuff in parentheses using the grouping method because we have 4 terms. This negative 2x in front basically stays in front for the entire problem. I just like to draw an arrow pointing down to indicate that it stays in the problem forever. Now we're going to look at these 4 terms and we are going to make 2 groups out of those 4 terms. Some people make their groups using underlines. Some people make their groups using parentheses and putting a plus between those parentheses. Myself, I make my groups by drawing a straight line through the middle. Be careful if you draw this line that you don't draw it straight through the plus sign or the minus sign, because then it looks like a plus sign. Now we are going to find the GCF from these first 2 terms. The greatest common factor of 4x to the third and negative 6x to the second is a positive 2. The most x's they have in common is x squared. So our GCF for those first 2 terms is 2x squared. Let's find the GCF for our second group. Since our second group starts with a negative, we need a negative as part of your GCF. The biggest number that goes evenly into both 14 and 21 is 7. There's no x's with this 21, so we do not need an x as part of our GCF. When factoring by grouping, we're going to factor this GCF of 2x squared out of the first 2 terms. 2x squared times what equals 4x to the third? Well, that's 2x. And 2x squared times what equals negative 6x squared? That's negative 3. We will then repeat the process for our second group. We're going to factor out the GCF of negative 7 and ask ourselves, negative 7 times what equals negative 14x? Well, that's positive 2x. And negative 7 times what equals positive 21? Negative 7 times negative 3 equals positive 21. Now, let's notice these 2 parentheses are identical. If they were not exactly the same, you did something wrong. Go back and check your work. But because they are exactly the same, we are going to continue factoring. The GCF of this expression we have here is actually 2x minus 3. The left side and the right side both contain 2x minus 3. So we're going to write 2x minus 3 in parentheses. Only write it once though. And if we take out this 2x minus 3, like cover up this 2x minus 3 with your finger, all that's left in that first part, if you get rid of that 2x minus 3, is the 2x squared. I am using colors intentionally here. And for the second part, if we cover up this 2x minus 3 because we took it out in front, the only things that's left is negative 7. So we write in parentheses 2x squared minus 7 as our second factor. In between those 2 parentheses is a multiplication symbol. You don't have to write that multiplication symbol if you don't want to. And don't forget, out in front we had this negative 2x, which needs to stay out in front. So there we have it. We factored our original polynomial completely using the GCF and then the factoring by grouping method. Thanks for watching.